Empress Sarah had not spoken to another living soul in 300 years. She sat on her throne made of black crystal high above the clouds of her fortress world. Screens floated around her like ghosts, showing her everything that happened in her empire. She watched trade ships move between planets. She watched her people build cities and raise families. She watched wars begin and end on distant worlds, but she never spoke. She never moved, she simply watched. Her advisors called her the silent goddess. They brought her reports in, left them at the foot of her throne. They bowed and walked away without ever looking at her face. Some of them had served her for 50 years and had never heard her voice. This was how Sarah wanted it 3 centuries ago. She had loved her people. She had walked among them, laughed with them, and fought beside them. She had trusted her counsel. With her life, she had believed that loyalty and kindness would be returned. With the same, she had been wrong. The betrayal had come on a night much like this one. Her closest advisors, her dearest friends, had tried to kill her and take her throne. She had survived, but something inside her had died that night. She had crushed the rebellion and then retreated to her fortress. She sealed the doors and never opened again. Now she was just a watcher. The galaxy could burn for all she cared. She would simply observe. On this night, her screen showed her something unusual. Small ship had entered Volante space. It was not a warship or a trading vessel. It was a human freighter, old and poorly maintained, limping through the void like a wounded animal. Sarah felt a small flicker of interest. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy. They were a young species from a harsh world called Earth. Most of the elder races considered them primitive and unimportant. They lived short lives and built fragile ships, and they died easily in the cold darkness of space. Thought she focused one of her screens on the freighter. It was called the Wandering Grace. The hull was scarred with burn marks and weapon damage. Someone had been shooting at this ship. Inside, she could see 3 humans. A man sat in the pilot's chair, his hands moving quickly over the controls. He had dark hair and tired eyes, and his face was tight with worry. A woman lay on a small bed behind him, her arm wrapped in bloody bandages. A girl of about 12 years sat beside the woman, holding her hand. Sarah studied them with cold curiosity. The man was clearly the captain. The woman was his wife. The girl was their daughter, a family running from something. She did not have to wait long to see what they were running from. 3 ships dropped out of hyperspace behind the freighter. They were K vessels, sharp and black like the claws of some terrible beast. The Cathari were hunters. They traveled the galaxy looking for prey, and their favorite prey was humans. They found the small creatures amusing to chase and easy to kill. Sarah watched as the Cathy ship surrounded the freighter. She heard the captain curse under his breath. She watched the girl's face go pale with fear. She saw the woman try to sit up, and she saw the pain that crossed her face when she moved. One of her advisors, a tall man named Vareth, approached her throne. He bowed low. "My Empress," he said, "a human vessel has entered our space. It is being pursued by Cathari raiders. Should we do something?" Sarah did not answer. She did not even look at him. Ver waited for a moment, then nodded. "Of course they are. Only humans, not worth our attention." He walked away, and Sarah continued to watch. On the freighter, the captain was talking to his wife. Sarah could hear Every word through her sensors. Lauren. The captain said the shields are failing. We have maybe 10 minutes before they punch through. The woman, Lauren, looked at him with steady eyes. Then we fight. We have one plasma cannon and half a torpedo. We can't fight 3 warships. Then we run. The engine is dying. Lauren, we're not running anywhere. The girl looked between her parents. Her name was Chloe and she was trying very hard not to cry. Dad, are we going to be okay? The captain turned to his daughter. He smiled at her, but Sarah could see the lie behind that smile. We're going to be fine, sweetheart, I promise. Sarah had seen that look before. It was the look of someone who knew they were about to die, but wanted to protect the people they loved from that truth. The Cathari ships moved closer. A message came through the communication system. The voice was harsh and cruel. Human vessels shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded. If you cooperate, we will make your deaths quick. If you resist, we will make them slow. The captain, whose name was Daniel Reyes, closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, something had changed in his face. The fear was gone. In its place was something harder, something sharper. He turned to his wife. Lauren, I need you to take Chloe to the emergency pod. Lauren stared at him. What are you going to do? I'm going to buy you time. Daniel, no, we stay together. We fight together. You can barely stand. Chloe needs you. He touched her face gently. Please, Lauren, let me do this. Tears ran down Lauren's face, but she nodded. She understood. Daniel helped them to the emergency pod at the back of the ship. It was small, barely large enough for 2 people, but it had a stealth system that might hide them from Akir sensors. Chloe grabbed her father's hand. Dad, please come with us, please. Daniel knelt down and looked into his daughter's eyes. Chloe, I need you to be brave. I need you to take care of your mom. Can you do that for me? Dad, can you do that for me? Chloe nodded, her face wet with tears. Daniel hugged her tightly. He breathed in the smell of her hair, the warmth of her small body against his. He wanted to remember this moment forever, even though he knew his forever was about to become very short. I love you, he whispered, both of you more than anything in this universe. He stepped back and sealed the pod. Through the small window, he could see Lauren and K.H. Lowe looking at him. Lauren pressed her hand against the glass. Daniel pressed his hand against hers, separated by the cold barrier between them. Then he launched the pod. He watched it fly away into the darkness, and he felt something like peace. Whatever happened next, his family had a chance. He walked back to the pilot's chair and sat down. He powered up the plasma cannon. He armed the single torpedo. He turned his dying ship toward the 3 Cathari warships, and far away on her throne of black crystal, Empress Sarah leaned forward. For the first time in 300 years died. The human had just done something. She did not expect that he had chosen to die so that others might live. She had almost forgotten that such people existed. Keith Ari, commander, sent another message. Human, you have 1 minute to surrender. Daniel Ray opened a channel. His voice was calm and steady. You want humans? Come and get one. Sarah's eyes never left the screen. The Cathari commander laughed when he heard Daniel's words. His name was Vriath, and he had been hunting humans for 40 years. He had killed hundreds of them. He had learned their weaknesses, their fears, their pathetic attempts at courage. They Always begged in the end, they always screamed this one would be no different. Did you hear that? Wrath said to his crew, the human wants to fight. How amusing. His second officer looked at the tactical display. Commander, they have launched an escape pod to life signs aboard. The pod is heading toward Volante space. Let it go for now. We'll catch it after we finish with this. Fool, I want to enjoy this. Rickaff leaned back in his chair. All ship's weapons free, but do not destroy him quickly. I want him to suffer. The first shots hit the wandering Grace like hammer blows. Daniel gripped the controls as his ship shook violently. Warning lights flashed across every screen. The shields, already weak, flickered and died. But Daniel did not run. He could not run. The only direction that mattered was away from his family, and that meant toward the enemy. He fired the plasma cannon. The shot was not powerful enough to destroy a Cathari warship, but Daniel was not aiming for the hull. He was aiming for the sensor array on the lead ship. The plasma bolt hit its target perfectly. Sparks exploded across the warship's bow, and suddenly Rickaff's tactical display went dark. What happened? The commander shouted. He hit our sensors, sir. We are blind on the forward arc. Rickaff's amusement turned to anger. Then use the other ship's sensors. Kill him. The two flanking warships opened fire. Daniel threw his ship into a desperate spin, dodging some shots but taking others. The wandering Grace groaned like a dying animal. Breaches opened on 3 decks. Fires burned in the cargo hold, but Daniel kept flying. In her observation chamber, Empress Sarah watched every moment of the battle. Her advisors had gathered nearby, curious about what had captured their Empress's attention. They watched the screens with mild interest, like people watching insects fight. The human is surprisingly skilled, one advisor said. For a primitive it does not matter, said Verith. He cannot win 3 warships against 1 freighter. He will be dead in minutes. Perhaps, said another advisor, a woman named Decessor, but you must admit there is something almost admirable about his stubbornness. Admirable, Very laughed. He's throwing his life away for nothing. The escape pod will never reach Volante space in time. The Catherine will catch it. Sarah said nothing. Her eyes remained fixed on the screen. Daniel knew his advisors were right. He knew he could not win. But winning was not the goal. The goal was time. Every second he stayed alive was another second his family moved closer to safety. He checked the tactical display. The escape pod was halfway to the Volante border. If he could hold out for 10 more minutes, they might make it do 10 minutes. It seemed like an eternity. He fired the plasma cannon again, this time at the nearest warship's engines. The shot missed, but it forced the ship to change course. In space combat, even small delays mattered. Vikath was growing impatient. Why is he still alive? Destroy him. Commander, he keeps moving. Our targeting systems cannot lock on. Then get closer, surround him. I want him dead. The 3 warships moved into a triangle formation around the wandering Grace. Daniel was trapped. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Plasma fire came from all directions. His ship was falling apart. The life support system was failing. The temperature was dropping. Blood ran down his face from a cut on his forehead. His left arm was broken from a falling beam, but he kept fighting. He had 1 torpedo left. 1 Single torpedo against 3 warships. It was not enough to destroy any of them, but maybe, just maybe, it was enough to do something else. Daniel looked at the tactical display one more time. The escape pod was almost at the border. Just a little more time. He armed the torpedo and aimed it at the lead warship, not at the hull, not at the engines. He aimed at the fuel cells that powered the ship's weapons. He fired. The torpedo flew straight and true. The Cathari point defense systems tried to shoot it down, but Daniel had timed his attack perfectly. The torpedo slipped through their defenses and hit the fuel cells. The explosion was massive. The lead warship did not die, but its weapons went offline. Fire spread through its lower decks. The ship began to drift, unable to fight. Wreck stared at his burning ship in disbelief. How did he do that? Commander, our weapons are offline. We need to withdraw. No, the other 2 ships are still functional. Kill him. Kill him now. But Daniel had already done something else. While the Cathari were distracted by the explosion, he had turned his ship directly toward the 2nd warship. His engines were failing, his weapons were empty, but he still had one thing left: his ship itself. What is he doing? Vrith whispered. The 2nd warship tried to move, but it was too late. The wandering Grace slammed into its side at full speed. The impact tore through both vessels like paper. Metal screamed. Fire bloomed in the vacuum. The 2nd warship broke in half. In the observation chamber, the advisors gasped. He rammed them, Thesser said quietly. He used his own ship as a weapon. Madness, Virth muttered. Complete madness. But Empress Sarah saw something different. She saw a man who had nothing left but his own life, and he had chosen to spend that life protecting the people he loved. She had not seen such a thing in a very long time. The wandering Grace was gone now, torn apart by the collision. Debris floated in the void where it had once been. Daniel Reyes floated among that debris, his body broken, his suit leaking air. He was still alive, but barely. His vision was going dark. His lungs burned for oxygen that was not there, but he could still see the tactical display on his suit's wrist. Computer, the escape pod had crossed the border. Lauren and Chloe were in Volant space. They were safe. Daniel smiled. It hurt to smile, but he did it anyway. He had done it. He had given them time. He had given them a chance. The last Cathari warship moved toward the debris field. Rakath wanted to find the human's body. He wanted to make sure the man was truly dead. He wanted to see the face of the fool who had cost him 2 ships. But then the commander noticed something on his sensors. The escape pod, it was just across the border, moving slowly through Volante space. Forget the debris, Wrath said. Target the escape pod, full speed. Commander, that is Volante territory. If we cross the border, the Volante have not enforced their borders in 300 years. Their Empress is a ghost. She will do nothing. The warship turned and accelerated toward the escape pod. In the observation chamber, Sarah's advisors watched the Cathari ship approach the border. They are going to cross. Vera said they're going to take the humans. Should we stop them? Vesser asked. Very shook his head. Why would we? They are only humans. The Empress has not intervened in galactic affairs for 3 centuries. Why would she start now? He was answered by a sound that no one in that room had ever heard before. Empress Sarah spoke because she said her voice like ice and fire. Those humans are mine. And then she rose from her throne. The advisors could not believe what they were seeing. Empress Sarah was standing. She was walking, she was moving toward the command center with steps that were slow but certain. Ancient systems came alive as she passed. Lights flickered on in hallways that had been dark for centuries. Doors opened that had been sealed since before any of them were born. Very stumbled backward. My Empress, what are you doing? Sarah did not answer him. She did not even look at him. Her eyes were fixed on something far away, something only she could see. Desire fell to her knees. She moves. Silent goddess moves throughout the fortress. Alarms began to sound, not warnings of danger, but announcements of awakening. The Empress was active. The Empress was walking. The Empress was about to do something. Sarah entered the command center. It was a vast room, filled with ancient technology, machines so old that no one remembered how to use them, but Sarah remembered. She had built this place with her own hands long ago when she still believed in things like hope and justice. She touched a console and the room came alive. Holographic displays filled the air. Star maps appear showing every ship within 1,000 light years. Weapon systems that have been sleeping for 3 centuries powered up with a low, dangerous hum. Her advisors had followed her, too afraid and too curious to stay behind. They watched from the doorway as their Empress took control of systems they did not know existed. What is she doing? Vareth whispered. I think Desire said slowly. She is preparing for war. Sarah opened the communication channel. Her voice went out across all frequencies, reaching every ship in the sector. It reached the Cathari warship that was speeding toward the escape pod. It reached trading vessels and military patrols and distant outposts. Everyone heard what the Empress said next. Cathari vessel, you are approaching Volante territory. The humans in that escape pod are under my protection. Turn back now or face the consequences. On the Cathari warship, commander of Rakath stared at his communication screen in confusion. A Volante message. Impossible. The Volante had not sent any official communications in 300 years. Who is this? He demanded. I am Sarah, Empress of the Volti Dominion. I am telling you one final time, those humans are mine. Leave now or die. Rakath laughed. The sound was harsh and ugly. The Volante Empress, everyone knows you are nothing but a legend, a story mothers tell their children. You have not ruled anything in centuries. I rule everything. I simply chose not to act. Until now I do not believe you, and even if you are real, what can you do? The Volante military is weak. Your empire is dying. You have no power left. Sarah's voice became very cold. You think I have no power? She touched another console deep beneath the surface of her fortress world. Something ancient began to wake up. The Volante had once been the most powerful empire in the galaxy. They had conquered 1,000 worlds and defeated 100 enemies, and at the height of their power they had built weapons, terrible weapons designed to destroy entire fleets in seconds. Those weapons had been sleeping for 3 centuries. Now they opened their eyes. In space, massive structures began to rise from the dark side of the fortress world. They were orbital platforms, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a small moon. There were 12 of them, and they all pointed their weapons at the Cathari warship. Vathsen officer went pale. Commander, we are detecting Massive energy signatures, weapons of unknown type, power levels are impossible. This cannot be right. What do you mean, sir? Any one of those platforms could destroy our entire fleet, and there are 12 of them. Vath stared at his screams. The platforms were fully powered now, their weapons glowing with terrible light. He had never seen anything like them. He had never even imagined anything like them. He had made a terrible mistake. Commander, his second officer said urgently. What do we do? Rex did not answer. He was frozen, unable to think, unable to move. Sarah's voice came through the communication system again. You have 5 seconds to change course. 5, 4, 3, turn us around, Rikath screamed. Full retreat now, but it was too late. Sarah had stopped counting. She touched the firing control and light filled the void. The weapons were called Star Breakers. They had been designed to fight gods. Using them against a single Cathari warship was like using a volcano to light a candle, but Sarah did not care about proportional response. She cared about sending a message. The Cathari ship disappeared. It did not explode. It did not burn. It simply ceased to exist, broken down into atoms by forces that no shield could stop. In the command center, the advisors stared at the empty space where the warship had been. She destroyed them. Ver breath in one shot. She destroyed them completely. Thesser looked at her Empress with new eyes. She could have destroyed anyone at any time. For 300 years she had this power, and she never used it until now. Varith said until 2 humans needed her help. Sarah ignored them. She was already moving to the next console, bringing up the location of the escape bot. Lauren and Chloe were alive. Their pod was drifting slowly through Valente space. Its systems failing, they would die if someone did not reach them soon. Sarah thought about sending a rescue ship. She had thousands of ships. She could order any of them to retrieve the pod, but something inside her rejected that idea. Something told her that this task was hers alone. She had watched a man die to save his family. The least she could do was save them herself. My Empress, Besser said carefully, what are you doing now? I'm going to get them. Going to get them? You mean you will send a ship? No, I mean I will go myself. The advisors looked at each other in shock. The Empress leaving the fortress. The Empress flying a ship. It was unthinkable. It was impossible. It had not happened in 300 years. My Empress. Please, Barth said, let us send someone else. It is too dangerous for you to leave. Sarah finally looked at him. Her eyes were old and tired, but there was something new in them, something that had not been there for a very long time. A man just died in front of me, she said quietly. He gave everything he had to save his wife and child. He asked nothing of the universe except time. Time for them to escape, time for them to live. She turned away. I have spent 300 years doing nothing, watching, hiding, letting the galaxy burn because I was too hurt, too afraid to care about anything anymore. She began walking toward the hangar bay. That man showed me what I had forgotten. He showed me what courage looks like, what love looks like. I will not dishonor his sacrifice by sending someone else. The advisors followed her in silence. They had no words. They had served this Empress for decades, and they were only now beginning to understand her. In the hangar bay, Sarah found a small transport ship. It was old but still functional. She powered it up herself. her hands remembering controls she had not touched in centuries, as the hangar doors opened to reveal the stars. Thesser approached the ship. "My Empress," she said. "May I ask you something?" Sarah looked at her. Why do these humans matter so much? They are strangers. You have never met them. Why risk everything for them?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft, because someone should, because their lives have value, because a good man died believing that the universe would protect his family. She paused. "I want to prove him right." She closed the ship's hatch and flew out into the darkness. Behind her, the fortress world hummed with new life. Systems that had been dormant were waking up. Communications were being sent. The galaxy was about to learn that the Volante Empress had returned, but first, she had 2 humans to save. The escape pod was dying. Lauren knew this because she could read the warning lights. Oxygen was running low. The heating system had failed an hour ago. The emergency beacon had stopped working. After the first 30 minutes, they were drifting in the void, invisible and forgotten. Chloe was curled up against her mother, shivering in the cold. Lauren had wrapped her in every piece of clothing they could find, but it was not enough. The temperature kept dropping. "Mom," Chloe whispered. "I'm scared." Lauren held her daughter tighter. "I know, baby, I'm scared too." "Is Dad coming back?" Lauren closed her eyes. She had seen the explosion through the pod's tiny window. She had seen the wandering Grace break apart against the Cathari warship. She knew what that meant. She knew that Daniel was gone. But she could not say those words. Not yet, not while Khlo still had hope. "Your father loves us very much," Lauren said carefully. "He did everything he could to keep us safe." Chloe understood. She was 12 years old, but she was not a fool. She had seen her father's face when he sealed the pod. She had seen the goodbye in his eyes. She started to cry, quiet tears that froze on her cheeks in the cold air. Lauren cried too. She cried for her husband, for her daughter, for the life they had built together. She cried because she was going to die in this tiny metal box, and Khlo was going to die with her, and Daniel's sacrifice would mean nothing. The universe was cruel. The universe did not care about love or courage or sacrifice. The universe let good people die and bad people win, or so Lauren believed that. She did not know that Empress Sarah was coming. Sarah flew her small transport ship through the darkness. Her sensors had found the escape pod floating near a small asteroid field. It was barely putting out any energy signature. A few more hours and it would have been impossible to detect. She brought her ship alongside the pod and extended a docking tube. The connection sealed with a soft hiss. She pressurized the tube and opened the hatch. Inside the pod, Lauren heard the sound and looked up. Someone was docking with them. Someone had found them. Her first thought was they had come to finish what they started. They had come to take what Daniel had died to protect. She pulled Khlo behind her and grabbed a metal rod from the pod's emergency kit. It was not much of a weapon, but it was all she had. If the Cathari wanted her daughter, they would have to go through her first. The hatch opened and Lure raised the rod, ready to fight, but the creature that stepped through was not Cathari. She was tall and slender, with pale blue skin and silver hair that floated around her like water. Her eyes were deep purple, ancient and wise. She wore robes of black and silver, and she moved with a grace that made Lauren think of flowing rivers and distant stars. She was the most beautiful and terrifying thing Lauren had ever seen. "Who are you?" Lauren demanded her. Voice shaking, the creature looked at her with something like sadness. "I am Sarah, Empress of the Volante Dominion. I have come to take you somewhere safe." Lauren did not lower the rod. Why would an Empress save us? We're nobody. We're just humans. Your husband was not nobody. Lauren's breath caught in her throat. "You saw him. You saw what he did." "I saw everything." Sarah's voice was soft. "I watched him fight 3 warships. Alone, I watched him sacrifice himself. To give you time, I watched him die with a smile on his face because he knew you were safe." Tears ran down Lauren's face. "He's really gone." "Yes, I am sorry. By the time I decided to act, it was too late to save him." Lauren's legs gave out. She collapsed to the floor of the pod, the metal rod falling from her fingers. Khlo crawled to her mother and held her, and they cried together. Sarah watched them. She remembered what it felt like to lose someone. She remembered the pain, the emptiness, the feeling that the universe had taken something precious and would never get it back. She had felt that pain 300 years ago. She had let it turn her heart to ice. She had let it make her cold and distant and alone. But watching this mother and daughter cry, she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt warmth. She felt compassion. She felt the desire to help. She knelt down beside them. For an Empress to kneel was almost unheard of. Empresses did not kneel. They sat on thrones while others knelt before them. But Sarah knelt anyway because it felt right. "Your husband reminded me of something I had forgotten," she said quietly. Lauren looked at her through her tears. "What?" "That there are things worth protecting. That courage is not about winning. It is about fighting for what matters even when you know you cannot win." She paused. "I have forgotten that such people existed. Your husband reminded me." Chloe looked at the Empress with red eyes. "Are you going to help us?" "Yes, child. I'm going to take you to my world. You will be safe there. No one will hurt you. You have my word." "But why?" Lauren asked. "You don't know us. You have no reason to help us." Sarah was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was heavy with old pain. 300 years ago, I trusted people. I loved people. I believed that kindness would be returned with kindness. She looked away. "I was betrayed by everyone I cared about. They tried to kill me and take my throne. After that, I decided to trust no one. I decided to help no one. I sealed myself away and watched the galaxy from a distance." "That sounds lonely," Khlo said softly. Sarah smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. It is, but I thought loneliness was better than pain. I thought isolation was better than betrayal." She looked back at Lauren and Chloe. "Your husband showed me that I was wrong. He trusted the universe to protect his family. He gave everything he had, asking nothing in return except hope. That kind of faith." She shook her head. "I had forgotten it existed." Lauren wiped her eyes. "Daniel always believed in people, even when they didn't deserve it, even when they let him down. He always said the kindness was never wasted. He was wise. He was stubborn." Lauren laughed through her tears. "So stubborn, he never knew when to give up. Perhaps that is the same thing." Sarah stood and offered her hand to Lauren. "Come, my ship is warm, and I have medical supplies for your arm. Let me take care of you." Lauren took her hand and stood. Chloe stood with her still holding on to her. Mother, together they walked through the docking tube into her ship. It was small but comfortable, with soft seats and warm light. Lauren sat down and let out a breath she had been holding for hours. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for saving us. Do not thank me yet. I have only done what any decent person would do, what your husband would have done if our positions were reversed." "Still thank you." Sarah nodded and moved to the controls. She set a course for her fortress world and engaged the engines. The ship began to move through the darkness, carrying them towards safety. As they flew, Chloe moved to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there in the debris field they had left behind was what remained of the wandering Grace, what remained of her father. "Empress," Chloe said quietly, "what will happen to my dad? His body?" Sarah looked at the child with gentle eyes. "I will send ships to recover him. He will be brought to my world and he will be given a funeral with full honors. He died a hero. He deserves to be remembered as one. Thank you. It is the least I can do." They flew in silence. After that, Lauren fell asleep, exhausted from pain and grief. Khlo stayed awake, watching the stars. Thinking about her father, Sarah watched them both. She thought about the last 300 years. She thought about all the time she had wasted hiding from the universe, afraid to care about anything. One human had changed everything. One brave, stubborn, foolish human had reminded her what it meant to live. She did not know what the future would hold. She did not know if she was ready to return to the galaxy, to rule again, to care again, but she knew one thing. She would not let Daniel Reyes' sacrifice be forgotten. The fortress world appeared ahead, glowing softly in the darkness. Home, safety, a new beginning. Sarah prepared for landing and thought about what she would do next. There was much work to be done. The memorial was held on the highest tower of the fortress world. Thousands of Volante gathered below, their faces turned upward toward the platform where their Empress stood. They had never seen her in person before. For 300 years she had been a rumor, a legend, a ghost that ruled from the shadows. Now she stood before them in the light of 3 suns, and they could not look away. Lauren and Khlo stood beside her. Lauren's arm had been healed by Volante medical technology, and she wore a simple black dress that the Empress had provided. Khlo wore black too, and she held her mother's hand tightly. Before them was a small coffin made of crystal. Inside lay Daniel Reyes, recovered from the debris field by Volante ships. He looked peaceful, as if he was only sleeping. Sarah stepped forward to speak. Her voice carried across the gathering, amplified by ancient technology, reaching every corner of her world. 300 years ago, I closed my heart to the universe. I had been betrayed by those I trusted most, and I decided that the only safety was in isolation. I watched from afar as empires rose and fell, as species wared and made peace, as countless lives began and ended. I watched, but I did not act. I saw, but I did not help. I had convinced myself that nothing mattered, that nothing was worth the risk. She paused and looked down at Daniel's coffin. I was wrong. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. A few days ago, a human freighter entered our space. It was a small ship, carrying a man, his wife, and their daughter. They were running from hunters who wanted to kill them. They had no weapons, no all eyes, no hope of Survival, they were nobody special, just ordinary people trying to live their lives. But when the hunters came, when there was no way out, the man did something extraordinary. He turned his ship toward the enemy and fought, not because he could win. He knew he could not win. He fought to give his family time to escape. He fought so that his wife and daughter might live, even if he did not. Sarah's voice softened. I watched him die. I watched him ram his ship into a warship 10 times its size. I watched him destroy himself to save the people he loved, and in that moment I remembered something I had forgotten. I remembered courage is not about victory. It is about choosing to stand when everything tells you to run. It is about protecting what matters even when the cost is everything you have. She looked at Lauren and K.H. Lowe. This man, Daniel Reyes, was not a soldier. He was not a warrior or a hero from some ancient story. He was a frayer captain, a husband, a father. He was ordinary in every way except one. When the moment came, he chose to be extraordinary. I have lived for over 1,000 years. I have seen empires built and destroyed. I have met kings and conquerors, saints and monsters, but I have never seen anything more noble than what Daniel Reyes did in his final moments. She raised her hand and the crystal coffin began to glow. This was a Volant funeral tradition reserved only for the greatest heroes. The body would be transformed into light and sent into the stars, eternal and unchanging. Daniel Reyes, your empire honors you. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten. Courage has changed the course of history, though you will never know it. Rest now among the stars you love to travel. Rest knowing that your wife and daughter are safe. Rest knowing that your life mattered. The coffin rose into the air, glowing brighter and brighter. Then it burst into 1,000,000 points of light that scattered across the sky like diamonds. The crowd gasped and wondered. K.H. Lowe watched her father become stars. Tears ran down her face, but she did not look away. She watched until the last spark faded into the light of the sun's. Goodbye, Dad, she whispered. I love you. After the ceremony, Sarah met with Lauren and K.H. Lowe in her private chambers. The room was warm and comfortable, filled with soft light and beautiful art. It was nothing like the cold throne room where she had spent 3 centuries alone. I have been thinking, Sarah said, about what comes next for you and for my empire. Lauren nodded. We can't stay here forever. We need to find somewhere to go, somewhere to start over. That is what I wanted to discuss. Sarah folded her hands in her lap. You are welcome to leave whenever you wish. I will give you a ship, resources, anything you need to build a new life. But I wanted to offer you another choice. What kind of choice? Stay here in my empire. Make this your home. Lauren looked surprised. You would let us live here, humans in the Volante Dominion? More than that, Sarah leaned forward. I want to end my isolation. Your husband showed me that I have been hiding for too long. The galaxy needs me and I have been too afraid to act. That changes now, but what does that have to do with us? Everything. If I am going to rejoin the galaxy, I need to build relationships with other species, with humanity. You can help me do that. You could be a bridge between our peoples. K.H. Lowe looked up like ambassadors. Sarah smiled at her. Exactly like ambassadors. Though I imagine it would take many years before you were ready for such a role. You would need to study to learn about both our cultures, to understand How diplomacy works, I would like that. Khlo said softly, I want to do something important, something that would make Dad proud. Lauren put her arm around her daughter. Are you sure about this, honey? It's a big decision. Dad died to give us a chance. I don't want to waste it. I want to do something that matters. Lauren looked at Sarah. You would really do this? Take us in, educate us, give us a purpose. Your husband gave me back my purpose. It seems only fair that I return the favor. Lauren was quiet for a long moment. She thought about Daniel, about what he would want for them. He had always believed in taking chances, in trusting people, in building bridges instead of walls. He would have loved this opportunity. Okay, she said finally. We'll stay. Sarah's smile grew wider. Good, then let us begin. The years passed quickly. Sarah emerged from her isolation and began to rule her empire. Once more, she opened diplomatic channels with a dozen species. She signed treaties and trade agreements. She sent aid to worlds that needed help. The galaxy watched in amazement as the silent goddess became the most active ruler in 1,000 years. Len became an advisor to the Empress, helping her understand human culture and customs. She found purpose in her work, a reason to keep going even when the grief threatened to overwhelm her. She never forgot Daniel, but she learned to carry his memory as a source of strength rather than pain. And Khlo grew up. She studied diplomacy and languages, history and politics. She learned to speak Volante as fluently as English. She made friends among both species, bridging gaps that had existed for centuries. By the time she was 25, she had become one of the most respected diplomats in the sector. On the 10th anniversary of her father's death, Khlo stood in her office on the fortress world. She was preparing for a major summit between humanity and the Volant Dominion, a historic meeting that would formalize the alliance between their peoples. On the wall behind her desk hung a photograph. It showed a man with dark hair and tired eyes standing in front of an old freighter. He was smiling and there was love in his face. Beneath the photograph was a small plaque. It read, Daniel Ray's father. Hero, the man who reminded an empress how to care. Chloe looked at the photograph and smiled. We did it, Dad. We built something good, something that will last. There was a knock at the door. An aide entered. Ambassador Ray's. The delegations are arriving. The Empress is asking for you. Khlo nodded and straightened her formal robes. She took one last look at her father's picture, then turned and walked out to meet the future. The summit was a success. The alliance was signed, and in the histories that would be written about this moment, about the friendship between humanity and the Volant Dominion, one name would always appear. At the beginning, Daniel Ray's, a freighter captain who died fighting impossible odds, a father who gave everything for his family, a man whose courage changed an empire that he had not lived to see what his sacrifice created. But somewhere among the stars, in the light that bore his name, perhaps he knew, perhaps he smiled, and far away, on a throne of black crystal, Empress Sarith watched the galaxy with eyes that were no longer cold. She watched trade, ships and diplomatic vessels moving between worlds. She watched humans and Volante working together, building a future that neither could have achieved alone. She thought of Daniel Reyes and the lesson he had taught her, that isolation was not safety, that silence was not strength, that the only thing Worth more than power was having. Something worth protecting she had. Learned that lesson well, and she would never forget it.